I'm going to welcome in my dude, Christian Lee Navarro. You may know him from 13 Reasons Why. You may know him from a host of other things, a longtime actor. And he's now my new teammate. So welcome in. I appreciate you joining us, man. And kind of, let's give a little background first before we get into, just what prompted you to reach out. I think it was after the Frank Grillo episode, right?
I was listening to, so that episode, my dad had sent me that episode, and he had been, my dad, Lee Navarro, who's a cop, retired cop now, 20 years, New York. He had been sending me, he kept telling me, you got to listen to this podcast. And honestly, I knew what the subject matter was. And I don't think I was at a place to listen to it. I was still in a fragile place, right? I knew that it would make me look in the mirror, make me think about things and help ultimately, right? And I think I was sort of in a place where I didn't know I wanted to help yet. And I had sort of gotten off my ass finally, started to get back in the gym after suffering with depression and anxiety. And I'm listening to this podcast and I'm listening to Frank, who I admire as an actor. I've seen him countless things, right? He's a certified badass, martial artist, boxer, just a real man's man, right? And I'm listening to him talk about his friend's suicide and dealing with his mental health as a result of that, and after that, and opening up about his journey generally in the business, and you with him, and really feeling this teammate vibe, right? And I thought I need to reach out immediately and let this guy know that he's making a difference in my life personally, right? Just in case, sometimes whatever we do as and I would consider you an artist, my friend, as artists, whatever we do, sometimes we put that out there into the world and we don't know what's coming back at us. And I thought I got to reach out and say thank you, because I did feel included. I felt heard. It was the first time in a while that I thought, man, they really get. I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy, but it's good to have that validation amongst your peers and people you look up to this way. And I think your show validates a lot of people's journeys. And
I appreciate that. What led you to be in such a dark place?
Well, it's twofold, man. I took this incredible ride with this show, 13 Reasons Why. Number one show on the planet for a while. Half a billion people tuned into this thing on Netflix.
And for people who don't know, it's a show about suicide.
Yeah, it's a show about suicide prevention. It's a show about mental health awareness. And whilst on this show, I all over the world met people who shared their stories, right? And it was a privilege to be in that position. A lot of people they didn't feel like they had anyone else who could understand. And because I portrayed this character, and my character on the show is sort of a little bit more even keel, and he's there for everyone. They felt like they could bring their pain to me, and I would listen to it and, really empathize. But I never, during this 4 or 5 years we did this thing, I never once stopped and thought about me, my mental health, and where I was. I was just riding this high. For 10 years, I was auditioning and getting bits here and there. And then this thing happened. And I'm thinking, fuck, it's the dream, right? This is it. I'm on the top of the mountain. And then it ended. Right, the show ended. Pandemic happens. 2 years, no one's calling, nothing's happening, and I think what I allowed to happen was this thing that I loved and still love so much. I let it become me. I let it become the thing that defines me. So when I didn't have work coming in, I didn't understand it. I'm watching people who are, they say comparison is the thief of joy, right?
Oh, terrible. That's where social media screws us all.
It does. And that's the era we live in, right? It's a now era. It's a social media era. I'm watching all of my contemporaries excel, and I'm going, well, I know I work harder. I have the work ethic. I know I'm talented. Why isn't it happening for me? And that, at the same time, I met this woman who was everything I had ever asked for in a person. And I allowed the one to poison the other. I had never dealt with depression, anxiety. I certainly never had self-confidence issues, and all of these things were compiling on top of each other whilst I'm trying to hold on to this person who was, and I still love her very much, but I couldn't do it. I allowed that to poison the one, one to poison the other. And it took me to places I didn't know I could go in that regard. And for the first time, I realized, holy shit, I'm not, I worked on this show and I never once thought about my own mental health. They offered it to us, Paramount and Netflix. We had counselors on set. They had resources.
Really?
Yeah,
They were counselors on set. Really?
Yeah, we had, I mean, everything from therapy dogs to psychiatrists, psychologists, everything.
Wow.
They were really diligent about taking care of the actors as we were trying to tell this story. But I never thought I needed it. I think part of that is growing up the way you grow up as young men in this society. Yep. And I think part of that is I really felt like I was on a high, right? I didn't feel bad until it was taken away from me, and you got to look in the mirror. And who are you if all that shit's gone, right? That's the tough question I was coming up against.
Yeah. But it's also interesting because your character, right? You're basically there to spread the message and the word of why someone else committed suicide, and then the rest of the world comes to you like you're really that person. That's a big burden.
Yeah.
To take on in the real world.
Yeah.
And I take it on here doing a mental health podcast. People act like I'm your therapist. I'm not. I'm just a dude who's fucked up, who's learning to be good with his fucked upness. And God bless me with the ability to communicate about it.
Right. And I think that, there's this great line I heard recently: the pressure is a privilege. And it's hard sometimes to really see that, but it is true. Now, the flip side of that is these people think that you have it all figured out too, right? They're coming to you and they're saying, this is my story. Thank you for helping me get through this. And then retrospectively, I'm going, I'm just as fucked up as all of you, right? I'm just trying to get through this thing we call life just like everybody else. And still, I was just in England at a convention, 13,000 fans, meeting, coming up, saying hi, thank you, telling me their stories. I got this letter here. This lady handed me a 6-page letter telling her story, what she's been through. And that's a regular occurrence because of the show we were on. But it's a bit of a burden. And you take on, if you're empathetic, you take on what's happened and you really live with it. And so it can be a bit much, but it is a privilege also.
Yeah, and listen, one of the things, because you're talking also, look, doing what you do is harder than what I do because you're kind of beholden to what somebody else thinks of you.
Yeah.
Right. That's how you get your jobs, which fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Right. So I always marveled at actors saying, like, man, the most successful ones have been rejected 99.99999% of the time. It's a lot of rejection to deal with. For me to get to where I got to, the first 11 years of my career, people don't know this, and I wrote this in my book, Unbreakable. I was rejected for 11 years. I was making $9,450 a year, living in New York City, trying to outwork the world. I just decided I'd be rejected more than anybody else, and I'd be relentless in my pursuit. But man, that rejection, folks, it fucks with you. Like, be careful what you wish for when you want to get to this level, because it definitely fucks with you behind your rib cage, between your ears, and it gets to you. But I'm in a different case. Once I got somewhere, I'm there. You have to constantly do it.
Yeah, it's really strange. It's the only business where you got to constantly prove yourself, right? It's not a. For instance, I was talking to you earlier. I'm in the process of in the running for this show. It's been 6 months I've been auditioning for this thing. And I think to myself, there's already 50, 60, 70 hours of my work on TV, and I starred in one of the in this show, and it doesn't matter. None of it matters. You just got to show up and prove yourself every day. And if you're not mentally tough, if you don't take care of your mental health and check in with yourself and check in with your therapist and with your friends and conversations like these, your self-worth plummets. And I was able to ride that high. I never had self-confidence issues. But then my ex left, and that was really the trigger for all of the spiral, right? And then all of a sudden I start going, am I worth it? Self-confidence starts creeping in. And then the auditions start becoming desperate, right? Because you become beholden to this job. I need this next job, right? Instead of, it'd be nice if I get this. It becomes, I really need this thing. And you can feel that desperation. And it becomes a domino effect. And it's tough to deal with the no's, but that's the business, really.
And I think also, look, you kind of got hit with something where a lot of us get hit with as we get success. Like I think I was happier mental health wise when I was broke.
Yeah.
I know people out there are going to go, shut the fuck up, Glazer. You don't know I've been on both sides. Like I've had, when I was making my $9,400 a year, I had to decide, is my electricity going to get turned off this month, or my gas going to get turned off? Am I just going to get fined for not paying my rent? Am I going to have to worry about getting evicted? I knew my phone bill had to stay on because I'm an investigative, NFL reporter. So that had to stay on, but I had nothing to lose. So I didn't give a fuck. Right. And now I have so much to lose. And same with you. You've hit that peak, you've hit that pinnacle. Now all of a sudden you have something to lose. You start, like you're saying, almost acting from a place of fear of losing something instead of just being relentless because you have nothing to lose.
Yeah, that's a switch you gotta. I think it's a journey that every actor probably goes on, and everyone in this business probably goes on. Right? You chase. There's always another mountain, and I don't think you know that as a young person going after the dream. You're just trying to get to that peak, and then once you get there, there's just as many valleys, and you can see just as many peaks in front of you, and so it becomes daunting. Right? It's like, oh shit, I got to keep climbing. I thought I worked 10 years to get to that point, to have that show. It happens. And now it's like, okay, but I'm only 31, right? There's another 10 years in front of me. I got to keep working and keep going. And I think it's normal to have those roadblocks, to have those pitfalls. I just wasn't prepared. I didn't have the tools, even though I had been working on a show that was giving me the tools. I didn't have the tools, and I wasn't ready to use them if I had.